Welcome back to the AM show. This is our Big Stories segment, and we are going to discuss minority in Parliament saying that they will not be intimidated, and that comes on the back of yesterday's botched arrest attempt, or the attempt by the National Intelligence Bureau to effect an arrest warrant and pick up the Reverend Ntim Fordjour, Member of Parliament for Asin South, over his allegations of money laundering and drug trafficking with regards to those airlines. And we have joining us for a conversation Mr. Appiagyei-Atua. He is a professor, beg your pardon, Appiagyei-Atua. Yeah, Ben is here with me to steer the conversations. Prof, thank you so much for joining the conversation. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Ben.
Well, let's kickstart the conversation from what has happened so far, from what you've seen, what you've heard, and what you make of these dynamics. I remember when I believe it was the central bank's governor, his house was visited. We stopped using the word raid for certain reasons after some explanations were given. You spoke on the back of that matter. What do you make of this incident, starting from maybe the accusations and then the posturing, the national security seeking to arrest Ntim Fordjour? Let's get your overarching opinions before we get into the specifics, Prof.
Thank you for having me. Yes, I think it has moved from search warrant to arrest warrant. And for the search warrant, there seem to have been some justifications for what the government in power working with the security agencies sought to do. But the arrest warrant issue is more problematic, especially looking at where it started from. Now, this is a member of parliament who is a ranking member on the committees connected with security. And his caucus, probably he saw some issues that he might have referred to his caucus. The caucus came to an agreement that this matter is worth investigating because from the narrative, they didn't have all the facts. So coming up with a press statement, and then the issues began to get out of control, if you can put it so, because the reaction from the NDC, the government, wasn't probably the best way to have dealt with the matter, because this is a member of parliament, a ranking member, who has raised this point. So it was up to the government to have reacted by asking for a committee or a probe to be set up. And then at that point, you ask the honorable member of parliament to give some specific information that he may have. But where the situation where the reaction was rather come and give the evidence, and then we will proceed from there, seems to have put the cart before the horse. And so that is where you see a posture from the NPP also saying that that is not the way things should go. And then we see national security coming in, threatening to arrest the honorable member of parliament and actually proceeding to do that. And if you look at the whole process, the fact that the people, when they hooded and you couldn't identify their faces, at least for some of them, according to the reports that we have received, going with AK-47 rifles and not going with a search, an arrest warrant, all those raised big red flags, which connects with the rights of the member of parliament.
Right.
Even if it's an ordinary person, it raises issues about procedures that are supposed to be followed, due process.
All right. Prof, I just want to take your thoughts on a few more things, and then Sweetie Abochi, who is here with me, will also come through. What is the position of the law? You said something interesting that in terms of how he is being handled. What is the position of the law in terms of someone who makes such an allegation? Does it still go by he who alleges must prove?
Well, I think the rules are a little bit different for members of parliament, especially if you belong to a committee a select committee and there's an issue about an allegation where you don't have all the facts, it's like blowing the whistle. You want some further information to be able to establish a particular fact. And so I think that is where the Honourable Member of Parliament was coming from. So what should have been done is that Parliament has different practices, where among which is to set up a committee to investigate this matter, at which point the government will come up with the information that it has, and the ranking also come with the information that it has, or the caucus will come with that information. And then they'll be able to look into the matter and see if some evidence has been established that indeed the airplanes that arrived on a tarmac some few weeks ago may have contained contraband or not. If it is not established, the matter rests there. But I think instead of doing that, things went out of control, or the security agencies took the matter into their own hands. I don't think that was a security sector issue in terms of the personnel coming from NIB to arrest the person and ask for information. I think this should have rested within the presence of Parliament, for Parliament to have resolved the matter, because while they may have certain rights to undergo that process, that is not the only means of resolving the issue.
Right. Prof, I believe you are referring to the MP's parliamentary privileges, right?
Yes.
Okay. Those parliamentary privileges have limits, which is why in some instances a directive can be sent to the Honourable Speaker for him to give permission for certain actions to be taken. Of course, not even the President is above the law within the constitutional boundaries. Now, Reverend Ntim Fordjour has also said, and I'm quoting him, that he has more information that in coming days and weeks, he's even going to bring to bear on this matter. I saw a statement on behalf of the minority by the former Lands and Natural Resources Minister, Jinapo, on the same matter. And he talks about giving information. Where best to start than from Ntim Fordjour, who appears to have known more than maybe the ordinary Ghanaian. So I'm just a little, if parliamentary privilege, it has its limitations. And some of the claims that have been made, he has said, posted, that he's going to give more information. I believe he was on another show and mentioned that recently. Does that not require that we get this information from him?
Yes, and the question is, how do you get that information from him and at what forum? And that's why I'm saying that the process or the means to get this information is through the setting up of a committee, because he has triggered a process where he's alleging some contraband may have entered the country or left the country. So it is then up to the government to say that these are the parliamentary processes available. Let's go through that. I know that he organized a press conference, and probably he should have initiated a process within that committee. But having done the press conference doesn't therefore move the case away from Parliament to NIB for them to solicit such information from him. A committee should have been set up, and Ntim Fordjour, the Honourable MP, would have been invited to give such information. I think that is the way that the whole process should have gone. And that would have solved the issue one way or the other. And, you know, all the tension and the drama that this issue has raised wouldn't have come to this, to the fore, and to this situation where it has raised the political temperature in the country. Right.
Prof, the legal advisor to Reverend Ntim Fordjour, Samuel Atachia, says that there's a serious, and this is a serious effort to undermine the Constitution. And I want to quote him here. He says, the matters emanated from Parliament. If you pay regard to Article 115 of the 1992 Constitution, it provides that there shall be freedom of speech, debate, proceedings in Parliament, and that freedom shall not be impeached or questioned in any court or place out of Parliament. And I'm just curious, on what basis can such an argument be made, if at all, that there's a serious attempt to undermine the Constitution? Can they, in fact, make that argument?
I think so, because the members of Parliament enjoy certain privileges, and this applies to certain particular offices or office holders. The judiciary enjoys certain privileges, particularly carved out for them to be able to function effectively. Academics enjoy certain privileges and academic freedom to be able to do independent research and to provide certain information, even as, for example, as I'm doing now. So Parliament or members of Parliament also enjoy certain privileges in order to be able to enable them to perform their functions effectively. And if you look at the fact that this particular provision, that apart from the speech that they can make in Parliament, which gives them some immunity, it is also about the fact that if you want to question or you call a member of Parliament to be questioned or to be arrested and so on, you have to go through Parliament. And the reason is that the security agencies are under the executive arm of government. And so to ensure a protection of separation of powers, they say that we cannot just arrest a member of Parliament if he's on his way to Parliament, if he's attending at or returning from Parliament. These are immunities specifically carved out for members of Parliament to protect them from being in their space being invaded by the executive or any other arm of government or other agencies. And so that is what is at stake here. And the question is, was any of these privileges violated? I think yes, and if not, there was an attempt to violate that. And I think even if we can say that the security agency has the power to do what they did, we also still see some gaps in how they operated. And so the point is that sometimes you may have the right, you may have the law on your side, but sometimes it's not strict application of the law that can help resolve certain issues, because this one, I see it as a mix of law and politics. If you recall last year, when the then majority leader, Honorable Afenyo-Markin, rushed to the Supreme Court with regard to the issue that concerned, can't exactly remember the matter. He went to the Supreme Court, all right, but at the end of the day, what he obtained wasn't able to move the speaker. So I think this is one way where
the impasse between whether or not those who are declared to go independent should sit with the majority caucus. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah. So in the end, the Supreme Court decision could not be enforced in a way that they had wanted. And so the point was made that he shouldn't have rushed to go to the courts. There are enough parliamentary processes, internal parliamentary processes, which should have been applied to resolve the issue. And a similar thing is applying here, where NDC, now the majority, are also trying to use the law to compel somebody or to violate the immunities that are accorded a member of Parliament. Because in this case, even I'm told that they wrote to the Speaker, but they said they had not heard from the Speaker.
Yeah.
If you haven't heard from the Speaker, I think the proper thing is to wait until you hear from the Speaker. Or if it is clear that the Speaker is not ready to respond, then you look at other options. And so at the end of the day, these are, I think, the steps that should have been taken to be able to resolve this issue on the quiet. As it stands now, it seems to raise the issue that probably, or the perception is creating, is that there may be something to hide on the part of the NDC. That's why it is taking this aggressive approach to bully the member of Parliament to release certain information. That may send a chilling effect on freedom of expression, not only for members of Parliament, but for ordinary citizens to speak out about issues, and then to rely on to do whistleblowing by relying on the Whistleblowing Act. So that's the impact on freedom of expression in the country as a whole is at stake here. And so we don't need to play with it or limit it just to the member of Parliament or the NPP, but to the larger Ghanaian community when it comes to talking about issues which the government may not find pleasant, but which is the truth to say, so that we'll be able to resolve certain issues according to the rights that the Constitution grants us as citizens of the country.
You said that while the law may be on your side, sometimes it doesn't always apply, which makes me wonder, is this a case of, that universal law that to every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction? If you look at the sequence of events or the way the plot played out, Reverend Ntim Fordjour's presser, the ruling government or the government spokesperson's defense of the matter, the president's call for an investigation and all that, is it just a clear case of politics playing into the legal matters? And if so, how do we remove the politics from it and deal with this matter head on?
Certainly, I think politics is being played into the law, and that is where I find problematic, because if we are not careful, it will lead to creating a standard where we say that this is how NDC want things to go, and if that is so, then it's going to create self-censorship, or people will not have the freedom to comment on issues, and it will lead to creating a culture of silence. And that's definitely with the way our democracy has evolved up to. We don't want to go that route at all. So I think it is not too late for some compromises to be reached, and for whether there was an arrest warrant or not, that should be put aside. And in any case, there didn't seem to show that there was an arrest warrant. Then they call for the setting up of a committee to look into the matter. And I believe at that point, probably the NPP will be compelled or persuaded to come and give the evidence. Because at this point, I see a breach in the trust between the NPP and the security agencies and the NDC. And therefore, I'm not sure the Honourable Member of Parliament will be willing to voluntarily go, even if they say we are no more coming to arrest you. It may be a little bit difficult for him to go to NIB, and I don't think NPP also may want to follow that route. So if the committee is set up, it will create a compromise. And then they'll be able to say that, okay, this is an opportunity for you within the parliamentary processes. So come and give the evidence, and let's find a solution to it. I think that is more a preferable option than the security approach, which is aggressive and may send a chilling effect on freedom of expression in the country.
While these are parliamentary matters with legal angles to it, I'm curious to know what legal action Reverend Ntim Fordjour could take in the face of all this going on right now. Although they had, the minority has written to the Speaker for clarity, could he take any legal actions against, especially the National Intelligence Bureau?
It's possible. You can smell a violation of his rights, a violation of his parliamentary privileges in terms of his right to express himself as a member of parliament, which the Constitution clearly provides under Article 115 that there's some protection that should be accorded members of parliament. And then the procedure that was used to arrest him is also in violation of the Criminal Procedure Act on how to effect an arrest. So there is some room for having his rights having been violated, and therefore some course of action may accrue to him there. But again, even if NPP would want to think about that, I would advise that they don't go that route, but try to resolve the issue within the Conference of Parliament. There are certain protocols that they have established over the years, which have worked to a very large extent to deal with such matters. They should resort to that and have the issue settled amicably.
Right.
What is at stake is the information that they need to establish whether contrabands enter the country or not. And we should also not forget the fact that they didn't only talk about these two airplanes coming into the country in a suspicious manner, but also some other security-related matters about some cash and gold bars and so on, which we have not heard anything about, even some cocaine-related matters. We need information about that. That is very critical. So the government should also not separate these other issues from the air med issues and focus only on that. For those ones, it is clear that the information is there, the video footage and so on. And the question is, what has happened with the investigations? It's such as the Attorney General and Honorable Minister of Justice began by being transparent with some of the cases he's dealing with. I think the NDC should rely on that trajectory and ensure that information is given to the people as quickly as possible. And that is why there is a minister at the presidency that is in charge of information or communication. He should be doing that. But in a way, his reaction to the Ntim Fordjour allegations was not very well done, because he seemed to parry the issue and just focus on putting the blame on Ntim Fordjour, which Prof, I don't think is the appropriate way to go.
I'll come back to you on certain crucial points. Let's also usher into the conversation Dr. Rashid Draman, Executive Director, Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Good morning, sir. All right. As and when we have him, he'll share his thoughts with us. But let me come back to you, Prof. So from where you sit, is the executive overreaching? And please stay with me. I'm following a certain course. Is the executive overreaching? Is it becoming overweening in these actions?
Well, in this particular incident, I think so, but I'm not sure a pattern has been established that this is the direction that the executive wants to go. So I'm just hoping and praying that it will be a one-off incident, that going forward, this issue will be resolved and there will not be any attempt to gag people from expressing themselves, whether as a member of parliament or as an ordinary citizen.
Now, in the Constitution, we all have rights, some privileges, but also responsibilities. Your right ends where someone else's rights begin. I just want clarity on this. His parliamentary privileges. Now, you as a lecturer, you have some privileges, academic, that you enjoy when you are lecturing and all of that. As a member of parliament, do his parliamentary privileges, are they somewhat limited outside of parliament?
It depends. Within the presence of parliament, he may enjoy more immunities than outside. But in some respects, outside the confines of parliament, he's still a member of parliament and he may be performing parliamentary functions. So in all these situations, parliamentary privileges should be enjoyed by him.
So he would enjoy vicarious benefits?
Yes, I'll say so.
Okay. Moving the conversation forward, I'm struggling a bit, because the point then is that where does the buck stop? As for how the arrest at least was attempted to be made yesterday, we can get into that. But I want to stick to the substance of the matter and the allegations that have been made. In this instance, with everything he said, so just clarify for me, if I as a journalist, I enjoy as a member of the Fourth Estate some privileges, there are certain things I can get into, but I have limits. If I said that there would be a coup or a coup had been foiled per intelligence and this was not proved factual, what would be the repercussions for me if the law attempted to, go after me for maybe misinformation or disinformation? What would happen to me?
Yes, to almost every right or freedom, there is a limitation, or there are limitations. One general limitations and one specific limitations embedded in the particular right or freedom. When you talk about freedom of expression, it is one of those freedoms that have limitations embedded in them. In the name, subject to national security, public health, and decency, and so on. So it is not an immunity that is absolute, and it covers even those that have specialized immunities, like members of parliament, the media, academia, and so on. And so one is not saying that the member of parliament can say anything and go scot-free. And the same applies to ordinary persons. You can't also not say anything. So the law, the laws relating to human rights try to strike a balance so that in one breath, people will not be limited in how they can freely enjoy their rights, either for their own personal purposes or for the larger interests of the society. The same way, the law also makes sure that there is a limit to which you can go so that it will not affect the freedom of the country or the security of the country.
Right.
So in this particular case, if you make an irresponsible statement that there's a coup d'etat and so on, where there is none, that can cause fear and panic, and it can be a basis for you to be arrested and tried for violating the extent of the freedom that you have in terms of expressing yourself.
And that is the exact point, Prof. I know you have to knock off, so that's the exact point I'm making. It would have been reckless, irresponsible, and I could have been taken on. In this instance, you also see that it could have an impact on even investor confidence in the country. You know, we are party to a number of treaties and all of that. So my final bit to you is simply this. You say you tend to believe that maybe there's something that is being hidden, or you tend to lean more towards what Ntim Fordjour is saying. The question is based on what evidence? And adding it to this, if everything, you know, looking at our polarized political space, if indeed that evidence could be adduced, would we be here having this conversation? Wouldn't it have been adduced a long time ago?
Well, I think that in the first place, the point should be made that, yes, investor confidence and so on can be affected. But the bottom line is that if you look at the narrative and how the whole thing unfolded, from the beginning, in my opinion, I saw it as the statement that was made was to suggest that something may have happened. We don't have all the information. So if we provide the information, we'll be able to determine, and our minds will be settled that indeed nothing untoward happened. Because the way the two incidents, the two flights came into the country and so on, raised some suspicion. And I think he
suggested that Ghana was becoming a cocaine hub.
Well, I think, I don't know, I think that's probably what the statement may have been gone too far, depending on how you look at it. But the bottom line is that it's not necessarily to create lack of investor confidence or to make investors to panic and not invest in the country and so on. Because if you look at the issue, it's a transnational organized crime. And transnational organized crime, the UN has a specific office that deals with it, UNODC. And there are a number of international laws, about 4 or 5 laws, specifically under the UNODC's mandates, that is supposed to deal with transnational organized crime. And the key word that links transnational organized criminal activity together is cooperation. Because one act may have been hatched, the idea may have been hatched in one country. The organized criminal activity takes place in another country. The effects are felt in another country and so on. So the need for cooperation is critical. And in so doing, if you solicit for that information, you are not putting the image of the country in any bad way. You are rather cooperating. And because one country cannot solve the problem alone, you need the support of other countries and you need the support of the UNODC. So that, I think, is how the government of the day should have seen the issue and quickly set up a committee to deal with the matter and bring it to an end. But it looks like it was looked from the narrow point of view that it may be affecting the image of the current government in power. So we have to show where power lies by making sure that we get the information. And as a result, it has rather created a perception that there is something that may be hidden somewhere. That is why they want to cover the issue as quickly as possible. And that is where, to me, the problem lies, and which will rather affect investor confidence. So That's why I'm calling for that compromise, so that they'll be able to bring matters to a close by restricting the matter within the confines of Parliament, using parliamentary protocols and procedures. Of course, that doesn't mean that the people or the citizens should be kept out of any news, but the outcome of that should be made public. The same way they are also asking for the Sapema incident and others to also be made public. We should know how far the investigations have gone, and for that issue to also know that some arrests have been made. This is where the contrabands are being kept, and so on and so forth. That's rather engenders confidence in the society.
Right.
It engenders confidence in the government's seriousness to tackling transnational organized crime, and that is the same way that we should also use to deal with the Galamsey issue, which is also a transnational criminal activity.
Thank you, Prof, for joining the conversation. My only concern is still based on what evidence, and the president posted that the matters should be investigated. But, Prof, we're grateful for your time. Professor Appiagyei-Atua, he's a law lecturer at the University of Ghana Law School. Well, let's get into the next one with Dr. Rashid Rahman now, Executive Director, Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Doc, thank you for joining the conversation.
Good morning, Benjamin.
With everything that has happened, so we focused on the law. You can get into it as well, but we want to focus on Parliament. I have this message here from Reverend Latte. I'll just leave it there. He's a Ghanaian, he's a lawyer, he's in the UK. He says, here in the UK, if an MP makes serious allegations with facts outside Parliament, he or she is not immune. That's why MPs are encouraged to ask questions in Parliament. In fact, the Speaker frowns on MPs speaking outside Parliament. Reverend Fordjour is not above the law. He was not gagged. How do you respond to this? What do you think?
Well, I mean, that's a very kind of gray area because the minority has argued that, they had a press conference within the precincts of Parliament. And if you extend that to the fact that are the first kind of actors in the line of oversight in our country, as is maybe the case in many other countries, because usually the minority is a group that would always be at the forefront of exerting and exercising oversight. I mean, if indeed this was made the press conference by the minority group within the precincts of Parliament, then, an argument could be stretched that, he was speaking in Parliament. Not strictly on the floor of Parliament where members have absolute protection. Whatever they say on the floor, I think usually they are protected. Having said that, Benjamin, for me, I think my biggest disappointment is one of the comments that the professor of law made earlier. Could there have been a better way of handling this if indeed there is the interest of our nation at heart? Over the last couple of years in our country, I think we tend to see every issue maybe from an NDC or an MPP kind of perspective. This is a matter that is, first of all, of a lot of interest for our nation because of all the things that we've been hearing in terms of our young people getting into drugs and so on and so forth. And then also a matter of a lot of interest for the international community. If Parliament, whether NDC side or MPP side, should have this intelligence, I would have thought that there would have been a better way of handling it through the Parliamentary Committee, working very closely with the security apparatus in our country. Because I don't think if Parliament, the Committee on Defense and Interior, calls the security apparatus and says, look, this is, what we are finding. Can we move very quickly? Can we act on it, and so on? That security apparatus would have declined to maybe answer the call of Parliament and the Parliamentary Committee. So for me, that's my first disappointment. This matter did not have to get to where it had gotten to, where we are seeing embarrassing kind of visuals, a whole minority group in the space of their colleague trying to protect him and so on. How much protection can they give him and so on? And then we see a whole security apparatus, surrounding the house of the MP, making a mockery of our democracy. We don't need all this drama, honestly. The leaders of our parliament, I believe, should be up and doing matters like this. I think they should find a way of dealing with it as a matter of national interest, rather than letting it degenerate into, a media fanfare where I believe a lot of, media houses are also very interested in sensational matters like this. So it doesn't help. It doesn't help the situation. Then we get to where we are right now. We didn't need to get to this point,
right,
Benjamin.
Prof, Doc, you said we don't need all this drama, and I agree with you. So from your expert's opinion, I know you just said that your first disappointment is that the committee, Defense and Interior, didn't go straight to the security agency, rather, that presser that Reverend Ntim Fordjour held, that really brought us all this dramatic turn of events. So where in the plot, aside this, where in the plot do you think that the parliamentary work or the responsibility of this member of parliament, where did he first dip? Where was the first gap that happened in all this that brought us here? So, for example, when he came into whatever information that he, came into, that he stood on to do that presser, what should he have done? And then going forward, the response from the president, the reaction from the spokesperson or government spokesperson, and then everything that's playing out here, strictly from a parliamentary expertise perspective. Where are the gaps in the plot?
Well, I think for me, the first gap is, the member of parliament made an allegation and said, this happened. It presupposes that, he has some evidence. And I think I've heard calls. I've heard the Minister for Government Communication. I've heard people from the government side say, where is the evidence? I believe that in the early days, if the evidence was adduced, maybe the matter would have, progressed in a different direction. So for me, that was the big gap. And that's where, the whole matter turned political. Then all of a sudden, we saw the matter being, divided between NDC, MPP. And then when it gets political, then the conversation is completely lost, because now it's who will score the right political point. So honestly, for me, that is where things went wrong, and that was the biggest gap.
Right. How do we begin to turn it around from where we are now, where the minorities are written to Parliament, to the Speaker of Parliament? They're saying they will not be intimidated. Reverend Ntim Fordjour is not in police custody as we speak. Where do Parliament or these members of Parliament, and in fact the entire executive of both parties, where do we begin to set the record straight, set us back on track?
Yeah, I think they should step back a little bit. The MPP side, and I believe the NDC side. At the end of the day, even the minister responsible for this sector is a member of parliament. Some conversations could happen. True, we have gotten to a point where this cannot be taken out of the public domain anymore, because people are asking for answers. And the answers people are asking for, number one, if there's evidence, where is the evidence? What happened? Did somebody bring drugs? Did somebody bring illicit money into our country? I think the MPP side should do us a big favor by making sure that they provide these things so that the security agencies can do their job. Because, that is not the work of Parliament. Yes, Parliament can raise issues, committees can carry out investigations and so on, but there's a limit to how far Parliament can go. At the end of the day, this would have gotten to the door of the security apparatus and they would have to take it up because they would have the power to sanction and so on and so forth. So I think they should step back.
All right.
Have a conversation that maybe we should all be apprised of, at the end of the day, so that this matter can be settled. And if there is anybody who has done anything untoward, let the sanctions be applied or otherwise.
All right. Doc, it's been a good conversation, but right before you go, just give me some 20 seconds. The Member of Parliament has also suggested that he has more information on this that he is going to give. And I'm sure not just as media people, as Ghanaians, the security institutions, they would want to know more about it. What do you think the approach should be on the back of what you've just said? And how measured should members of Parliament be in terms of such allegations? Maybe just briefly.
Yeah, I think first of all, this is a matter, in fact, this committee, just like the intelligence committee that was set up, I think should be one committee that maybe the Parliament would have to take a serious look at, and maybe just like how the previous, the intelligence committee was, asked to take an oath of secrecy and be guided because of the sensitive nature of their work. I think this committee also falls in that category. So that's my first. But I think the answer to your question, I think, is that, look, they held a press conference and they said this happened. If they have evidence, they should hold a press conference, give Ghanaians the evidence, and let's stop all this drama. Honestly, that's my view. If they don't have any evidence, the member should come out and say sorry to Ghana.
Doc, we're grateful for your time with us this morning. So we're joined by Professor Appiagyei-Atua, University of Ghana Law Lecturer, and then Dr. Rashid Draman, Executive Director, Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Both of them joined us here. Well, let me tell you about the SCG Chartered Accountants, one of the leading indigenous A1-rated firms founded in the year 2009, having established itself as a trusted provider of audit, tax, accounting, and payroll solutions with a proven track record of advising medium-sized companies across various industries. Well, it has officially joined the BDO, the fifth largest global accounting network, effective August 2024. Now, the launch of the BDO in Ghana is scheduled for April the 11th, 2025 at 3 p.m. at the Tank Palace Hotel. And of course, there's an invitation being thrown to you. But we also know more.
Well, you do know that every year, thousands of Ghana's brightest minds seek better prospects abroad, leaving a gap in our workforce. And the question we keep asking is, how can Ghana inspire its talent to stay? Join David Ofosudote, Professor Mary Setrana, and Her Excellency Dr. Amina Gurib-Fakim, that's the former president of Mauritius, as the 12th edition of the Ishmael Yamson and Associates Business Roundtable to discuss managing the talent exodus, leveraging private-public partnerships for growth. This is happening on the 7th of May, 2025 at Labadi Beach Hotel. Starts at 9 a.m. sharp. And if you want to participate, text your name and organization to this number, 0530 117 202. You can also send an email to info@ieyamson.com. We'll take a quick break. When we return, there's so much more coming your way on the AM show.